In a previous video, I mentioned that my favorite movie is Top Gun, and since today is a teacher workshop day and we're taking a detour from our current series, I thought I'd share with you another of my favorite movies. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty tells the story of, well, you guessed it, Walter Mitty, who oversees the photo department of Life magazine and is an incessant daydreamer. I'll leave a link to the trailer in the description so you can check it out for yourself. Now, it's Walter's constant daydreaming that I can definitely relate to. Ever since I was a kid, I've had a very vivid and active imagination. So much so that, even though I'm an adult now, I don't like watching scary movies because doing so puts those images in my head and then my imagination immediately takes off running into some very dark places. Now, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, and I'm going to anyway, but I remember one of the stories I made up in my mind when I was in 6th grade. Now, before I continue, you need to know a few things about 6th grade me. First, I tended to space out in class a lot, and that's when I would daydream. However, I wouldn't just drift off and think about whatever. I would craft my daydreams. Whenever I decided the class wasn't that interesting, I would pick up my daydream from where I last left off and rewind the tape a little bit, continue it again, often refining some of the details in the narrative. And second, which is related to the first, is I was a nerd. I hung out with my nerd friends, Frank Walther and Josh Richline. And one of the things that we nerded out about was World War II military history, specifically the history of aerial combat. Now, we could look at any aircraft silhouette and tell you exactly what that aircraft was. And we would constantly engage in, what would win in a dogfight. By the way, the correct answer is always the F-6F Hellcat. And third, 6th grade was when people in my class started coupling. And as every late 90s teen comedy would later show, it was usually the jocks with the hot chicks. Now I know some of you are thinking, PV, you are a paragon of masculinity. Surely you had no problems with the young ladies. Just kidding. Absolutely none of you are thinking that. And did I mention I was a nerd? Yeah, I was a nerd. So much so that I remember being invited to a birthday party, and some of the kids decided that they were going to play Spin the Bottle. If you know, you know. And when I tried to join in, hoping to get my first kiss, they told me I couldn't play with them and that my job was to stand watch at the door and keep an eye out for the parentals. Anyways, now that I've filled you in on my status of lame in 6th grade, my recurring daydream involved the Nazis coming back to attack America, specifically Flower Bluff Intermediate in Corpus Christi, Texas. Of course, they were still using World War II era aircraft in 1992, and as luck would have it, one of the Me-262 pilots was shot down, but he crashed his aircraft perfectly with the landing gear down and everything so that I could get in the cockpit, obviously knowing how to fly the plane, and take off to shoot down Nazis. As I splashed my 5th bandit, thereby achieving ace status, I noticed that one Nazi was setting up a strafing run on Brittany White, the cutest girl in my class. No way. Not on my watch. I performed a complex series of aerobatic maneuvers and dropped behind his 3-9 line and lit him up like a Christmas tree. Then I flew past Brittany, in slow motion of course, as she blew me a kiss. Which is usually when the teacher would call on me to see if I was paying attention. I know, it's pretty lame, but that's how most of my daydreams went. From zero to hero. As 6th grade gave way to 7th and 8th, things for me in school, at least socially, got worse. I moved, made 2 new nerdy friends, and spent the next 2 years constantly getting picked on and harassed. My daydreams were no longer 0 to hero, they were 0 to AntiHero. I was inspired by the Punisher, who was a violent vigilante with no moral code who dispensed justice from the barrel of a gun as he saw fit. I would use my chore money to buy the comics when they would come out, often buying something that looked benign, like The Uncanny X-Men, so that my mom would ask, what I bought from the Navy Exchange. I could just show her the top comic in the book, in the stack. Now, I started to imagine what I would do to the people who picked on me, if I were bigger, if I were stronger, if I were armed. Maybe some of you can relate. Somebody or maybe even a group of people have harassed you, teased you, or belittled you in some way and your thoughts fixate on getting back at them. Maybe you don't think about the ways that you can violently get back at them, but maybe you play out conversations with them in your head and you think of all the ways that you could shut them down with a perfect sick burn. Now, there's a maxim that says, hurt people hurt people. This is usually used to explain the behaviors of bullies, but I think it also points to the natural inclination to hurt people who hurt us. But should we? Now, I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I know that you know the answer is no, but knowing what to do and actually doing it are two very different things. To help, I want to share with you another one of my life verses. Now, before moving on, and this is probably a function of my personality, you should know that my life verses tend to be aspirational, not inspirational. In other words, you're probably not going to create a graphic with "consider it pure joy when you encounter trials of many kinds" and post it to your social media, #blessed. However, I think that what I'm about to share with you can function as a North Star by which you can realign your life's direction. Romans 12:18 says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Now, the verse already has a couple of presuppositions baked into it. First, it assumes that you will have strife with other people. I know, it comes as like a mind-blowing news flash, but not everyone is going to like you or get along with you, and guess what? You're not going to like everyone either. Second, the verse reminds us that you don't have the only vote in the situation. What do I mean by that? Well, notice the phrases, "if it is possible," and "as far as it depends on you." If it is possible means that it is possible, that it is not possible to live at peace with everyone, even if you really want to. And the second phrase, ironically, is the most empowering. "As far as it depends on you," reminds us of an important truth that I learned a while back when I was seeing a Christian psychologist. You can't control what others do, but you can control how you respond. It's important, so I'm going to say it again. Okay? You can't control what others do, but you can control how you respond. Knowing what you can and cannot control is one of the most important lessons in life and will lead to peace. The reason that we are called to live in peace with everyone, with those two caveats, is twofold and can be found on either side of verse 18. See, verse 17 tells us to not repay evil for evil. When we seek revenge against another person for what they've done to us, we're keeping evil in circulation. Evil is not decreasing, it's increasing, and we are complicit in its increase. Unfortunately, I think we're seeing this in our country right now. As Christians, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the spiritual forces of evil. And it's Ephesians 6:12. When we repay evil for evil, when we increase the evil in the system, it only makes our true enemy, Satan himself, happy. Another liberating phrase that I've learned as I've gotten older is, "that's above my pay grade." It basically means that I'm not going to focus, or I am going to focus on what I am directly responsible for, and not worry about things over which I have no control. That's essentially what verse 19 is saying. It says, "Do not take revenge, my dear friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'It is mine to avenge. I will repay,' says the Lord." Getting back or getting even is none of my business, because that's well above my pay grade. God, the perfect judge, will ensure that justice is served in the appropriate way and at the appropriate time. And just so we're clear, Paul writes about the role that the governing authorities have in establishing justice just 3 verses later. But our job, if it is possible, so far as it depends on us, is to live at peace with others. Like I said, this verse is primarily aspirational. It's a standard that I aspire to daily. Now, I would be lying if I said that I always achieved it. I might enjoy living vicariously watching someone eliminate multiple members of the Russian mafia because the son of its boss killed his dog. And while I've gotten better at keeping my witty and often passive-aggressive insults to myself, I occasionally let a few out. But every morning, like pressing the reset button on a video game, I wake up refocused. And if it is possible, so far as it depends on me, I try to live at peace with everyone. May you do so as well.